Hello and welcome to yesterday's Airlines. Time for a look at the Phoenix August announcements. And Phoenixmodels have had a stellar 2023, as I think pretty much everyone agrees. Phoenix for many years have been producing pretty much the same range of Asian airliners, with a few Europeans like KLM thrown in, on pretty substandard moulds. But something's changed in 2023. I wonder if it's the competitive aspect, ngmodels eating into their market somewhat. Anyway, regardless of this, they have started releasing a much wider diversity of models, and that is good. Admittedly, lots of them are 747s, I don't like those, but it's still good to see our diversity. I also know that they're listening to collectors. I've got a friend who's speaking directly with Phoenix, giving them some advice, some really good advice, and I know quite a lot of the releases this month are due to him. So well done to that man, and yeah, well done to Phoenix too, to be honest. It's been a much more interesting set, and I have to say this month is also looking pretty good. So yeah, get into that in a second. I should also add that I've bought the first couple of Phoenixmodels this year, and I don't usually get too many Phoenix because of the aforementioned relatively weak molds and not usually very exciting criteria. But I've got two. I'm sure I'll be getting some more. So this year is looking good for Phoenix in my collection as well. It used to be the case in the earlier 2010s that I'd get 10 to 20 Phoenix a year, but in recent years it's been one or two. This year I get the feeling we could be about nearer to 10. So, looking quite good. But before we get into this month's releases, as always, gonna moan at you about the fact that some of you no doubt haven't subscribed to the channel. So please subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the videos, and check me out, of course, at the usual suspects at Airlines on Instagram and Facebook, and of course yesterdaysairlines.com, where I post all the time. In fact, I literally just posted the other day a review of the Delta Airlines MD-11 from Phoenix, which was in the June announcements, but only just arrived in the UK. And that actually is a surprisingly good model, much better actually than I expected it to be. So yeah, get on and check that out. Have a look around the site. There's tons of material. But now let's get on and talk about this month's Phoenix releases. So starting with the Airbuses, as always, first up we have a unique airline for 400 scale, a unique release for a new country and a new airline. And it is not often you get to say that anymore, and it certainly isn't often you get to say that for Phoenix. So, you know, that in itself I find interesting. I'm really keen to collect a wide diversity of global airlines, and whenever there's an airline from a country that's not been represented before, I was going to say a new country, but obviously they're not new countries, a country that's not been represented before, I think that's great. The only slight annoyance is, of course, that this is really modern. It's a Drucker A320 Neo. The reg is A5 Juliet Kilo Whiskey. Drucker is the national airline of Bhutan, that Himalayan country that's often quoted as being the happiest in the world, that's somewhere around the, Nepal kind of area. I'm not exactly certain its location, but it's high up. And Drucker have had for many years very restrictive operations because getting into the airport there is a real challenge given the altitude. But they certified the A319 for it a while back and replaced their BAE 146s. And now it looks like they've got an A320 Neo as well. Now, the livery itself is not the most exciting in the universe, but it's not bad either. It's quite nice. It's got a lovely dragon on the tail, actually quite a nice blue belly, and yeah, it's got some nice scripts. To be honest, it's quite nice for modern livery. It's a really good choice. I'm really pleased that Phoenix have released this. The only thing that makes me slightly displeased is that the Phoenix A320 is obviously not the best A320 on the market by some distance. In fact, it's bad equal with the jcwings one, maybe slightly worse even in some ways, which is a shame. But it's not horrific. It's just not great. I think the model will turn out okay. I don't own any Phoenix A320 Neos, incidentally, for exactly that reason. Just can't abide the mould, but also they don't produce the ones that I'm deadly keen on getting anyway. So what do I think about this? You know, the mold's hovering, isn't it, between gas guzzler and workhorse. It's not a great mould. But this model, the airline choice, now that's hovering between supersonic and high flyer. So I'm actually going to put this one in the high flyer. It's really nice to see a new airline and a national carrier, and for a country that's not been represented, I think it's a great choice. Next up is another great choice. This one is the German charter airline LTU. It's a A330-300. The reg is D Alpha Echo Romeo Golf. And LTU replaced their TriStars with MD-11s, but they didn't have them for long, and then they moved on to A330s. And once again, it's not a model which has been made, really. It has been made, so it's not like it hasn't ever been made, but it's only been made by Herpa a very long time ago on their not particularly good A330 model. In fact, it was made in 2001, so it's an ancient model. I can't believe nobody else has made an LTU A330-300 with this classic, beautiful red top scheme. So it's another excellent choice, and I do believe this was one of the suggestions from my friend. A really good option. I'd love to get this from ngmodels, I admit, but NG just don't seem interested in releasing this kind of airline anymore, which is a damn shame. However, the Phoenix A330 is good. I admit I haven't got many in recent years, mainly because there have been better alternatives, the NG version primarily, but not just the NG version. So, yeah, I just don't think I'm going to get it because I just don't have room for it in my German charter section. I've already got the TriStar. Probably don't need to. It's getting to that time when I start to need to cut back for space reasons. But I'm sure this will be a lovely release, and I think that given the mould is good and the airline choice is good, the livery is lovely, this one is crying out for supersonic. No reason not to make it so. Next, we've got another German airline, but this one's more standard. It's Lufthansa. Nothing overly exciting by that, except that it's an A340-200. DAI Bravo Echo is the reg. It's in the 90s scheme, which isn't that exciting, but nonetheless feels classic now, even though it's basically just Euro white. And again, it's an inspired choice because nobody has made this scheme for a long time. In fact, it's not been particularly well made anyway. The last version in this livery was in 2012 by Aero Classics. They also made this exact reg actually previously too. They made that in the same year. And both those are really nice models, though they obviously lack aerials. Before that, it had been made again by Aero Classics. In fact, they've made 3 versions of this, but that version was actually also from the same year. So in that same year, they made 3 versions. Okay, that's weird, but nonetheless, they're the only people to have made it previously. The Aero Classics versions are all really good. But I have to say that the Phoenix A340-200 mould is also really good. They made a few Series 200s recently, and I've been trying to resist buying them for the aforementioned space reasons. In fact, they've all been very nice, and I don't see any reason why this one wouldn't be nice as well, to be quite honest. So it's a good choice. I'm just looking at how the previous attempts came out. Air Tahiti Nui looks good, and they made a Government of Libya version too, and a Qatari Emiri flight. Yeah, neither of those really fit my criteria. This one almost does, but doesn't quite. Nonetheless, I still think it's a really good release. It's a model that hasn't been made for a long, long time, and this is going to be a version with all the mod cons, and people like Lufthansa. I'm going to put this one as supersonic as well, actually. I think it's another good choice by Phoenix. Next up, we've got an A340-600, and it's nice to talk about Phoenix and solid molds, and certainly the A330, A340 series molds are really good. And the 600 mold continues that. It's also excellent. It is far and away the best 600 in the scale. Now, Virgin is not unique. at all. And in fact, it does look, looking through the list here, that there have been a few Virgin A340-600s wearing this scheme, which is I think the last scheme they wore with the large billboard titles and slightly kind of, I don't know, kind of short colour. It's kind of a silvery but off-whitey kind of beigey colour. Anyway, regardless, on the fuselage, it's going to look good. I can see Phoenix have made quite a few of these already. Actually, they've made 1, 2, at least 3. But I still want them to put this in high flyer. Maybe I'm just getting heady because of the other releases, but I think I will put this one in high flyer. It will be really nice, and it's good to see some A340-600s. That's perhaps very generous of me. I probably should work towards it, but no, I'm going to put it in high flyer anyway. Yeah, that's a good start to this release set with these Airbuses. Can they keep it up? Can they keep it up into the Boeings? Well, not initially. Not initially, because the next model up is a 737 MAX 8. It is in the colours of Bonza, the new Aussie airline. And there's been a lot of Bonza recently. Gemini just announced one. ngmodels has made 3. Interestingly, they've only got 4 aircraft, and this is the first time this reg, VH Uniform Kilo Hotel, has been made. But that's not enough to rescue this, because it's been made 4 times by other brands, and because I really don't like the Phoenix Max mould very much, mainly because it doesn't look very much like a Max. It could be worse. It's certainly better than their Series 800. I'm sure I've talked about this in multiple videos previously. It doesn't do anything for me, and given there are so many other options for a Bonza Max, I'm going to put this one in the gas guzzler. The next model is a little bit more interesting. This is also a Max 8. This one's regged 9M Mike Victor Alpha, and it's in the Negaraku colours of Malaysia Airlines. I think it's their first Max 8. It has been announced by jcwings, but again, it's one of those future JC announcements. Who knows when the thing's actually going to show up. It'll certainly turn up before in the colours of this from Phoenix. Yeah, it's just the mould is slightly off-putting again. But this time I think I'll just workhorse this one. Again, the Max mould is not great. It's not a disaster. It certainly wouldn't be my first choice. In fact, I would avoid it personally. But it's not horrific. It just isn't as good as those from Gemini, JC, or ngmodels. The disappointment of the Boeings continues somewhat with the next release, which is, of course, the 747-200. This one's Iran Air. It's got the natural metal belly, I believe. The reg is EPIAG. Interestingly, I heard that last month Phoenix had accidentally put the wrong wings on some of their previous Iran Air releases, so you had mismatching registrations on the wing and the body. It's not the first time Phoenix have done that. I myself own an Air China Phoenix A350 with exactly that problem. I think it's B1086 on the wings and B1085 on the fuselage or something like that. It's a silly mistake to make, but I guess this sort of stuff happens. Nonetheless, regardless of the reg and everything like that, you surely by now know my opinion on Phoenix 747s. I'm just going to put this one on scrap metal and not labour the point. And things from here do improve. Things from here do improve quite a bit, because once we're past some of these weaker moulds of Phoenixes, like 737s and 747s, you're into territory which Phoenix is better at, and that is 767s. And we've got a couple this month. The first one is in the colours of Air Canada Cargo. Now, previously we've had Air Canada Cargo, but the Rouge version, and this one is in standard Air Canada Cargo colours. I really like the Air Canada scheme with the face mask and the dark tail. I much prefer it to the previous toothpaste scheme. And I like the Phoenix 767-300 as well. A little bit slab-sided around the wing, but generally a solid, good mould. And this is the first time anyone, again, has made this scheme and aircraft combo. So, yeah, it's nice. It's good. Not, again, one that fits my collection criteria, but one which deserves to be supersonic. Next up is a model which should have been made a lot in 400 scale. It's an American Airlines 767-300. This one's regged N377, Alpha November. And you'd think there were loads of these floating around, but actually when you look at what's been made in terms of American 767s, there have been, with this one, 11 made, but almost all of them have either been ancient or are just versions of each other. So there have been 3 different versions by Gemini. One's chrome, one's real metal, and there was another one with a different reg. And these are really old, date from the 2000s. There's also been a couple of versions by Dragon, and again, one's chrome, one's what they call metal magic. So there really has only been a couple of versions. And since I think 2008, there haven't been any that are same as this, i.e. in the old colours without winglets, which for me is a proper 767. Winglets, that's a bit modern that, for me. But hey, again, this is super exciting. I actually only got the Dragon one quite recently, super cheap, but I'd definitely be looking to replace it with this one. And it's another example where Phoenix are doing something they had previously not really done, i.e. make American airliners. Historically, Phoenix have almost completely ignored North America, and now each month we're getting an American this, or a Delta that, or an Air Canada this, and that is pretty cool. So it's good to see them expanding out a bit, and this is a really good choice because, as I said before, the mould is really good. So this one, supersonic for me, I think, and one which I almost certainly will be getting. In fact, it's the first model of this month's releases, even though it's the 4th supersonic, which is really damn good for a Phoenix month. It's the first one that I'm likely to buy. Moving on, we've got a couple of models which Phoenix has made a few times previously. So first up, there is a Thai Airways International 777ER Series 300s, HS, Tango Tango Charlie. Phoenix have made quite a few of these previously. If I'm looking at the list here, they've made at least, wow, they've made quite a lot of these. They've made, actually they've made a stonking number. So many I'm struggling to count on ad lib here. They've made at least 6 or 7 of these before. So yeah, there's not much to say about this. The Phoenix 777 is a good mould. It's not a great mould. It's not as good as the other available 777-300s nowadays, but it's decent. I have to say jcwings have also made some of these recently, and their ones will be better. So yeah, these are just going to be workhorses. Nothing more to say really on that side of things. And the next model is kind of similar. It's another 777-300ER. This time it's British Airways. GST Bravo Oscar is the reg. Again, not a lot to say. There has been an Aviation 400 version of this made recently. It was exclusive to Aviation Retail Direct, but it's still available. And there have been other versions as well, though interestingly, it doesn't look like Gemini's made one for quite a long time. All their versions are on the C mould. Phoenix has made 2 versions previously as well, so perfectly decent release, but again, just a kind of a workhorse release, in my opinion. And that leads us to our last Boeing, the 12th model of this release set. And this one is, superfluous. I understand why they're making it, but they probably shouldn't bother. It's Riyadh Air. It's got the same American reg as all the other announced versions, because I don't think they've got Saudi reg version available yet. So jcwings have announced this, Aviation 400 have announced this, ngmodels have announced this. They've all got better moulds than Phoenix for this type of aircraft by a country mile. So there's absolutely no sensible reason for you to go out and buy this version when you can buy any of the other 3 and they'll be better. Simple as that. Gas guzzler. So that takes us out of the Boeings and into non-Boeing territory. It's nice to see there are quite a few models in non-Boeing territory. In fact, there are 4. 3 of them are Soviet-era aircraft, and we'll start with one of those. It's an Ilyushin Il-96-300. This one is in a kind of pseudo Aeroflot colours, but the aircraft is nowadays flying with Ilyushin themselves, I believe. It's been registered RF 96007. It used to be an Aeroflot aircraft, but now it's operating in some other capacity. I haven't looked around in detail about what it's really doing. It's a little bit difficult to find a lot of info about it. It's kind of, it says here it's used as a flying narrative. I don't really know quite what that is, but regardless of that, the scheme is fundamentally the old Aeroflot scheme, but with some additions. It's got Aviation logo on the front, and it's got a little Russian flag inside the tail area, which itself is a big streaming Russian banner flag like the old Aeroflot scheme was. So yeah, it's interesting that Phoenix keep on managing to find versions of IL-96s to make. This one doesn't excite me very much because it's so kind of obscure, but it will be nice, I'm sure, because they've got an excellent IL-96 mold, one of their best. So it's kind of nice that they do find variants to make. And for me, anything that's like an IL-96 immediately is going to be getting quite a good score if it's on a decent mold, which it is. So I'm going to put this one in high flyer. Three models left. One of them's a Yankee, and that one is a McDonnell Douglas MD-11. As I said earlier in the video, I recently just reviewed the Delta version of MD-11, and the mold is decent enough. It's an old mold, it's been updated. The landing gear I don't love, I don't know the engine pylons, but at the same time, the rest of the mold's okay, and it's producing decent results. And this one is, again, a new aircraft airline combo in 400 scale. It's Ethiopian Airlines. It's a freighter. ET Alpha November Delta is the reg. Ethiopian operated 3 or 4 MD-11s, quite a few years in the 2000s. And yeah, the scheme isn't that exciting, is it? But it's not awful either. Nobody else has made it. I'm a little hesitant to really say lovely things about the mould. I really like the Delta example I've got here, but it definitely could be better if they could modify the nose gear. But it's still good enough to be high flyer, I think. The uniqueness of it makes it worthwhile as a high flyer release, definitely. And you'll notice a pattern here that even when you don't have the best mould in the universe, if you're putting a really interesting livery on it, then that elevates my kind of opinion of it, and I can accept some weaker moulds if you're doing interesting things with them. Whereas I can't really accept really weak moulds like their Max 8 here if you're just doing the same thing that everyone else has done. And that's been a good thing that Phoenix have done this year, is try something new. And the last two models kind of illustrate this. Phoenix have had a T154 mould for a long time. It's an old mould again, much like their MD-11. It's very similar to the Aero Classics because it was cloned from an early version of it. But Phoenix have updated it with rolling gear. It's not dreadful. It's just not as good as the ngmodels version. But, once again, Phoenix here are releasing 2 Balkan Bulgarians, and ngmodels never really release 2 154s in a month. It's just, they're just not doing it. So, in a sense, good on Phoenix. I'd rather these were by NG, but NG aren't doing the job. So good on Phoenix for releasing them. What we've got here is the original, or the 80s scheme on a B2, LZBT Alpha, and then we've got the 1990s scheme with the all-white fuselage and the green and red sashes there, and that one is LZBTM. They've both been made before, but only by Aero Classics. And I have to say that my version of the 90s scheme, that one's a bit of a zinc rotter. It's got paint bubbling, the gear is kind of falling off. So I'm looking to replace that one. My question in my mind is, am I looking to replace that one with a Phoenix mold, which is 95% the same as the Aero Classics? I'm tempted because the model's falling apart, the original version. But I'm not tempted to replace the older version, which I got an Aero Classics example of a few years ago. If these were NG, I'd almost certainly replace. But for the Phoenix version, it's a more difficult decision because the differences are relatively small. Nonetheless, they are still good options, and it's hard to get grumpy when people are releasing TU-154s in 400 scale. So, with that in mind, I'm going to put them both in the high flyer. They're both going to be decent. I actually did buy the Crassair TU-154 just recently from Phoenix, but that's a lot more unique in terms of the airline livery combo. Nobody else had made that before. It is a shame that NG aren't using their 154 more often, but that's not Phoenix's fault. So high flyer these two, I think. And that gives, when you look at the scoring here, that gives a really lopsided set of models in a good way. It's not often, I think, that I've ever scored a Phoenix release set, and this is quite a large release set as well, 16 models admittedly, but look, more than half of them are sitting up there in high flyer or supersonic. That is highly unusual for Phoenix. So I guess that means this is a really good month, a really nice set of releases. I'm really pleased that they are listening to collectors. I'm really pleased they're using some of their better molds, and hopefully that will continue. I know lots of other collectors are quite excited by a lot of these models. There is really good diversity here, so this is great. I mean, so a lot of people are saying that Phoenix are making the best releases on the worst molds. That's a little bit hyperbolic, but it's not a million miles from the truth. There's a lot of good stuff being made here. Good month, strong month, and that's it from me, really. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe if you did, and I'll see you next time at Yesterday's Airlines.